Hello and welcome to the Untitled Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, Thriver.co.
Take health tracking to a new level with your personalised at-home finger prick blood test. Catch any small health issues before they become big health issues. You can get £25 off your first test with the code OxygenAddict25.
We're also brought to you by PrecisionHydration.com.
Precision Hydration offer electrolyte drinks in different strengths to match how you sweat. Personalise your hydration strategy today at precisionhydration.com and get a free box or tube of pH worth up to $9.99 using the code OxygenAddict.
We're also brought to you by Tribe.
Natural sports nutrition delivered direct to you. Get a trial pack of 6 delicious energy bars, protein and protein shakes for just £1, including postage and packaging. Head to wearetribe.co/oxygen addict and use the code TRIBEOxygenAddict.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show. We've got some great stuff coming up for you this week. We've got loads of results from around the world. We've got an interview with Alan Murchison, who is the performance chef and has got loads of tips to help improve your nutrition and performance. We've also got an interview with Tom Crossland, who's going to be running 3,000 miles from Greece back to the UK, and all kinds of other good stuff as well. Some news. We've got all kinds of fun, Helen, haven't we?
We have. I was about to do mid-yawn there, Rob.
Caught you mid-yawn. How are you doing? How's your weekend been?
Mental. And I did tell you this, and we've just been chatting for about 25 minutes. I had to go. I had to have a little lie down in bed at 6 p.m. today.
Did you really? A bit afternoon snooze.
I was just knackered, honestly. So my weekend so far, this is bank holiday weekend. Most people, Rob, are probably about to tune in to the final line of duty. And did you know, are you at all into it? We're not obviously going to give anything away. So are you into it at all, Rob?
Not only am I not into it, Hells, my TV is unplugged most of the time. My son isn't in the house.
Brilliant. So let me tell you, Line of Duty is probably going to be all over, like everyone will be talking about it tomorrow, Monday, right? And we only started watching episode 1 of series 1 last week. So we are like years behind.
You're binge watching, are you?
Well, we're not going to binge watch.
I believe the kids call that binge watching, Hells.
Well, basically, we probably have about a month, 6 weeks of TV to watch. It's great.
Got you.
So we are also going to watch Line of Duty tonight, 1 episode, but we will be going to series 2, episode 1.
There you go.
There you go. Anyway, no, my weekend, Rob, coaching open water swim yesterday morning in the Keys.
I believe so. You met an old mate of mine. He sent me a photo through and said, look who I've met. I was like, it was a weird clash of two worlds.
So I was coaching and we had a lot of fun. The water temperature was about 12, it was either 12.5 or 12.8. So let's just say in plain English, it was cold.
The magic thermometer out, did they? It looked less than inviting when I was there on Friday night.
Honestly, it was. I mean, I didn't. To be fair, I didn't even put my hand in the bloody water. That's probably no. But we were coaching from the side, and we had 12 people, and it went down really well. So that was good. Caught up with a friend, so went walking in the afternoon. Went to a wind band orchestra concert last night, and then today. It was our local sprint triathlon, and a former colleague, was doing her first ever triathlon. And I thought, come on, it's only 10 minutes down the road. Think back to your first triathlon, and I was so scared. So I thought, I'm going to go and cheer her on and make sure she's okay.
Nice. So
did that. Then went and did a few walking recce's, and then. Then next weekend we've got the first of our kids' duathlon races.
I know. Wilby Jr. is entered. He will pin in a number on and come in zooming around and having some fun. That'll be good, won't it? Yeah.
So this afternoon, we went to do a course recce of that as well.
We'll tell you what, while we're doing this then, that's going to be at Lymm, isn't it? It's at Lymm High School. Our entry's still open if there are any relatively local people near to Cheshire.
Yep.
So they can still get their entries in. It's going to be next Sunday. So
Sunday the 12th of May.
Okay.
Head to canuteduathlon.com, and you can enter online there. We will also take entries on the day.
Nice.
And then there's a whole series this summer. So we've got then a race in Wrexham on June the 30th. And then we have a race in Knutsford on July the 7th. And it's all for primary school kids and year 7 duathlons and fun runs.
So what's the age group from? What's the age group from? What's the youngest who can do it?
So the youngest are like 5-year-olds can do the fun run, 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds we've had before, and then up to year 7, so that's 11 and 12, isn't it, for the duathlon?
Got you. Awesome.
So, yeah.
So if you're listening, listeners, and you're at a loose end next Sunday, get yourself down to Lymm High School in Cheshire. 10 o'clock start, is it? Something like that?
Yeah, it's around about. Registration will open at 9:30.
There you go. We'll see you all there. How exciting.
How exciting. So that was my day. And then when once we had done that course recce, I was then like, oh my God, I'm knackered. We've still got another day to go, Rob.
Think of it as a power nap, Hells. Think of it as an extra recovery session. We always say recovery is more important than the training when the training gets done, right? So well done you for having a power nap, I reckon.
Thanks. Tomorrow morning, bike ride tomorrow morning. That's on the agenda.
I love it. Well, I've been the opposite of that. I've been incredibly relaxed and have managed a 1-hour run this morning. That's all I did. Well, I'll tell you what, that'll segue really nicely into talking about recovery and need and recovery. This is going to segue really nicely into a little short interview we've got here. This is one of the guys I coach called Tom Crossland. He is super awesome dude. He's an ultra runner and he's planning next year to do something called the Run to Refuge from Greece all the way back to the UK. And the idea is to sort of mimic the path that refugees would have to take on that kind of entering Europe and that place to come to the UK. I'm going to let him explain all about it. He's a super cool guy, and I managed to just grab a short interview with him to find out all about it, which is going to be happening in about a year's time. Okay, so Tom Crossland, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on and really excited for you to get a chance to tell everybody about this crazy adventure that you've got lined up for next year. So first up, I've just mentioned the name Run to Refuge. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the headline figures. When is it? How far is it going to be? And why are you doing it, essentially?
So Run to Refuge is a 3,500 kilometer run.
Say that again. How far? Sorry?
3,500 roughly.
3,500 kilometers.
Depending on the route I decide to take. From Athens all the way back to London.
Wow.
Greece to London. And it's to raise money and awareness to try and support projects to end modern slavery, which is a pariah of today's society.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about that. I know that you've hooked up with the Tribe Freedom Foundation, and we've heard from those guys probably a couple of years ago on the podcast that they've done their Run for Love, again, with the aim of raising money to end modern slavery. But I'm going to put my hands up and say I'm really quite ignorant about all this kind of stuff. So can you explain a little bit more about what happens and how raising money is going to help prevent it, really?
So currently the current figures are that there are about 40 million people trapped in some kind of slavery in the world today. About 136,000 in the UK estimated, and raising money in the UK, the projects that Tribe Freedom Foundation work with are supporting survivors of modern slavery to rebuild their lives and rebuild their ability to continue to live in a free world, I guess.
Yeah.
$150 billion are made a year by traffickers.
Really?
Yeah.
So explain a little bit more then about human trafficking and modern slavery and typically like how it works and how people then get exploited during the process.
So it's usually people who are vulnerable for whatever reason. So the people that I'm kind of interested in are refugees coming through the southern European route, and often what will happen is because the Turkey route was closed down, they'll come up through Libya, and there are lots of people trafficking groups in Libya who promise passage into Europe and then a safe passage through Europe. But once people are kind of in the group or in contact with group, they will force them via violence or threats of violence against their families to work for free either in Libya or to be trafficked through Europe for various reasons, to work in agriculture in the UK, or in sex trade, or in not necessarily in the UK but in other parts of the world in the fashion industry.
Wow. Okay, so, and you mentioned the figure before, in the UK alone it's 136,000
estimated. It's really hard because it's hidden in plain sight, so it's hard to estimate the numbers.
Yeah, I was reading an article in the paper the other day about how one of the churches has set up some kind of hotline that apparently lots of modern car washes in the UK are apparently a typical place where people who've been trafficked are forced to work, and they've got some kind of checklist of, if you see the workers at a car wash exhibiting these behaviours, or if it seems like a too good to be true price at the car wash, and then often that's a flag that something, if it looks too good to be true, it usually is, kind of thing. Is that the kind of thing that happens?
Yeah, so car washing, domestic cleaning, business cleaning, working in the agriculture industry and kind of picking fruits and vegetables, kind of in those gangmaster type situations where there's one or two people controlling a group of vulnerable people.
Wow. Okay. And then the symbolism for your run starting down in Greece and coming back to the UK, is that presumably to sort of follow the sort of path that migrants would have traditionally followed? Yeah.
So that's one of the routes that some of the refugees might come through Europe via southern Greece and then move up through the 11 countries I'm running through.
Yeah. Okay. So what's inspired you to do this then? What was the... Because it's as far as big physical challenges go, it's an order of magnitude or 10 bigger than anything else most people have ever tried. What inspired you to do it?
So it's hard to really say what inspired me. I guess, as you know, I was born with cerebral palsy, and that meant that I really wasn't seeing myself as athletic throughout my childhood or early adulthood, and then I got into this crazy world of endurance sport and kind of changed my whole concept. But one thing that research shows about people with cerebral palsy is that over about the age of 40, 45, it gets harder to move, and chronic fatigue or aging increases more quickly than the general population. So I don't really know how many more years I can do this in sport, which is something I haven't really talked about before. So I don't know how many more years I'll be able to do this. And I really just wanted to take my love of running and adventure and journey and the privilege I've had of being able to kind of take part in endurance events over the past 5, 6, 7 years. And use it for something that would have big impact on as many people as possible, and use it for good.
Yeah. What are some of the events that you've done previously then that have sort of led you along the way to? I mean, it's hard to imagine how to prepare for something like this, but presumably it starts with some kind of standard run, and then the run gets longer, and then they become multi-day. What things have you done in the past?
Well, I started. I didn't really do any standard runs. I started with 100k along the Thames path because I fancied doing something a bit out of the ordinary, and then did another 100k the year after, and then a couple of years ago did the Grand, the 250k in Utah and Arizona in the US, a multi-day. And the multi-day format really appeals to me. It's really really enjoyable to go on a long journey over being relatively self-sufficient across multiple days in environments that if you weren't on your foot, you wouldn't get to explore. And it's that adventure and journey that I really enjoy.
Yeah, so the Grand to Grand race, for people who've not heard of it, then is basically you start at one edge of the Grand Canyon, you finish at the other edge, and like some of the photos you sent through from that were just mind-boggling from the things that you got to see.
A stunning route through true wilderness area, which for me who lives in the UK and for people who live in Europe, we just don't have any environments like that. It's proper high desert country at quite a high altitude with some really amazing sandstone geology and features.
And from the point of view of having to do those events, obviously self-supported, that means carrying your own thing to sleep in, your own clothes, your own food, your own water.
Yeah.
What kind of things will you get through in terms of like food and nutrition? How do you even begin to carry your own food and water for an event like that?
So the water in those events are provided by the organisers, but everything else you've got to carry on your back. So the only thing they provide is water and shelter. In terms of food, it's a real balancing act between taking too many calories and having to carry a lot. The more you carry, the slower you are, so the longer you're out, and not starving yourself. So I think I was probably on the more generous side and was carrying about 2,500 to 2,800 calories a day. And it's made up of dehydrated expedition meals, Tribe bars.
A word for our sponsors there.
And nuts and seeds and things like that.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of calories, that's a tiny amount. It's only just above like your probably basic metabolistic rate for a period of what were you out there for? 5-6 days?
7 days.
7 days. Did you lose weight while you were out there then, presumably, as you were doing it?
I don't think I did.
Interesting.
I lost a lot. I'm not sure whether I managed my calories pretty well, but as I said, I was on the more generous side of the spectrum. A lot of people will have been the minimum you can have each day is 2,000. So a lot of people will be closer to that.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so you've already mentioned you're raising money for the Tribe Freedom Foundation. Typically, how do they get involved with charities and people who have been victims of modern slavery, and what effects positively do they have on their lives?
So they're currently mainly working with two projects, which is Ella's Home and the Snowdrop Project, and they support survivors of modern slavery to rebuild their lives. They're kind of places people can go and live and have counselling and therapy and start rebuilding their lives and start working through the trauma of what they've experienced.
Yeah. Okay. And then from your point of view, obviously doing something like this, you mentioned you're going to be out there for probably close to 4 months. How far will you be running every day? My little brain can't do the maths.
So through Greece and Albania, where it's quite flat, I'm aiming for about 30 to 35 miles a day, so 50 to 55k a day to try and get the miles done. And then at northern Albania through Montenegro, Bosnia, Serbia and Slovenia, it becomes a bit mountainous. So I'm going to be taking one of the long distance trails out there, which goes through the Dinaricans, which are almost similar to the Alps. So I guess looking for 20 miles a day through there, going hut to hut, and then through northern Italy and Austria, it'll be through the Alps. So I haven't really worked out the route through there yet exactly, but I'm assuming 15 to 20 miles a day, depending on how high I'm going. And then hopefully through Germany and up to Calais, it'll be relatively flat again, so back up to 55, 60k a day.
Okay, so it sounds like a pretty epic adventure of epic proportions. How can people get involved and support you? Firstly, in terms of, I know it might be nice to have a bit of company while you're out there. So is it the kind of thing you're hoping people might come along and do some or all of it with you?
Yeah, so I'm going to be publishing my route or planned route on my website so that people can come along, and it's really hard for people to give up 3 months of their lives to run the whole thing. So I've had a few people who are able to give up, say, a week to run part of the higher mountainous stuff with me, looking at 5 to 6 people at a time joining me to run through the Balkan Alps and the European Alps, going hurt to hurt. And then I'm also working with local schools around here that they're going to run the distance in a day. So any other schools who are interested in getting involved, I'm developing teaching resources so that they can raise awareness through, I guess, PSHE lessons and things like that. I'm also looking for, I've got a few people who are willing to crew some of it, but if anybody else would like to crew, that would be great. Also, people who live in Greece, Albania, and the countries I'm running through that know the routes would be really useful to connect with and talk about the route I'm planning to take and see what their opinion is.
Yeah, definitely. So you're a year away. We just discussed just off air. The start date is tentatively written in to be the first. Well, not tentatively, but it's written in to be the 1st of May, 2020. Which gives us almost exactly a year to get the finer details worked out. But you're starting in Athens and you're finishing back in the UK over a 3 to 4 month period. Obviously, you're going to have to take a huge chunk of time off work to do this, a significant personal cost. How does it work in terms of these crazy expeditions, arranging sponsorship to actually help cover your costs and equipment and things like that?
So currently I'm covering all the costs myself, but I'm looking for a lead sponsor to come on board. Any companies that want to come on board and help fund either part of the project or all of the project, so that all of the money raised from sponsorship can go directly to the charity. None of the donations will be coming to fund it. If I can't get a lead sponsor, it'll be self-funded by myself.
Okay. And what companies have you got on board already that are willing to help you out with equipment and food and things like that?
Tribe and Precision Hydration currently, and they're the only two.
Brilliant. So we've got the big two on board already. That's great. That's all I got, man. I've got nobody else. So hopefully we'll be able to leverage in terms of like the reach of the podcast. We're looking for companies who can help you out, and most importantly, we're looking for people from the community who are inspired by the idea of 1 or more days of running somewhere incredible as part of an unbelievable adventure to raise money for a really important cause.
To build a tribe around the project.
To build a tribe around it. I like it. Nice. So what's your website then if people want to go over and check this out?
I can be contacted through runtorefuge.com, and Instagram is at runtorefuge. Run to Refuge everywhere on social media. But the website is Run to Refuge.
Great. So runtorefuge.com is the place to go over and check that out. We'll be doing regular updates about your training progress along the way, and to give people a kick in the bum to say, do you know what, I really fancy a week running through Greece next May. That would be a nice little challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited at the confluence of firstly you and knowing how you're going to put this thing together, and then leveraging the audience here we've got through the podcast and the reach that goes out around the world. I'm really hopeful that we can build some connections that are really going to be able to help you out, man.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thanks a lot.
So you can head over to Run to Refuge if you want to find out more details. Listeners, Hells have got a whole year to have a think about whether they fancy doing 1 or more days or a week's worth of running back across Europe to kind of join in with Tom, and anyone who thinks they can help out with any kind of logistics or planning or route or sponsorship or anything like that, then you can get in contact with Tom through that website. But plan to keep in touch with him over the coming year and follow his progress, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really great sort of challenge and story and everything. And yeah, it's awesome what he's doing.
Yeah, definitely. Really cool stuff. Hope that's been an interesting little segment for people and a bit thought-provoking as well. All right, let's kick off some results this week, Hels. There's loads of racing been going on. So shout out to our sponsors, Tribe. Obviously, you've heard Tom there talking about Tribe and the Tribe Freedom Foundation, who are trying to end human trafficking. And Tom's publicity that will be attracted to that will hopefully raise the profile of that quite a bit, I think. I've got to say, on a chocolatey level, there's been a lot of love for the chocolate brownie protein bars this week in the Facebook group. Been getting a lot of love from my athletes, Hels.
I am packing one in my back pocket tomorrow on our ride.
Yeah, they seem to be there. If there was like a league table of favourite protein bars, I think that's emerging at the moment as people's favourite so far. So remember, guys, if you're interested in trying this out, you can get over to wearetribe.co/oxygenaddict. Use the code TRIBEOxygenaddict and you can get a 6-pack of whatever you fancy. You can make up that pack of 6 things yourself for just £1 using the code TRIBEOxygenaddict. Should we kick things off with the results down in Pontevedra for this week, Hels?
Yes, we shall do. So in Spain, it was the ITU Long Distance World Championships. It was a multi-sport event, wasn't there? So there were loads of different events as well as the Long Distance World Championships going on. So loads of GB age groupers in action. They had aqua bike. They had
cross triathlon. They had pretty much everything you can think of, didn't they, going down?
Yes, yeah. In the Long Distance World Championships, which is almost like it's like the pinnacle one, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Javier Gomez took the win in 5 hours and 5 minutes. So they did a 1.5K swim, 110K bike, and a 30K run. And it just shows how incredible an athlete Javier Gomez is. What with 70.3 wins, with Xterra World Championship wins, with ITU World Champion wins. He's basically done it all, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive, sort of impressive race for him. I think if there was a bit of a head-to-head with him and Terenzo Bozzoni, Terenzo was a bit down coming out of the water from what I've read, so it's good to see him back racing well again. And then it looks like Gomez just put the hammer down on the run and just disappeared and left everybody. 1:47 run split for him for 30 kilometres. So, I was trying to do the maths. It's like 34, 35 minutes of 10K, something like that, isn't it? Which,
yeah,
that's fairly toasty for 30K run. Yeah, he is a legend. So another title for him. Over on the women's side, looks like Camilla Pedersen was leading for a while and then dropped out, so left the field wide open after that point, and Alexandra Tondeau of Belgium took that one out.
Yep, in 5:48. So for her, I mean, that's an absolutely fantastic result. Yeah, Pedersen had, she had to pull out after the first lap of the run.
Yeah, okay. Shame. Another good interview with her to listen back to after her pretty horrific crash. You could go back in our archives and listen to that one. She's another gutsy competitor, isn't she?
Yeah, and really, really just inspirational woman.
Too right. Another inspirational woman was Holly Lawrence, who we had on a couple of weeks ago, and she was in the run-up to 70.3 St. George. She is continuing her comeback, and it's headed in the right direction because she's taken the win at St. George 70.3. Sounds like it was pretty much just the Holly Lawrence show, to be honest. She took it out in 4:06 from Paula Findlay and Heather Wurtell. And then, do you know what, Hels? I saw a bit of the men's race on the Facebook Live footage, which was pretty good and entertaining. It was taken out by Rudy von Berg ahead of Bart Aeronauts, who had a storming run to close down, but was left about a minute short of the win. I think he ran a 1:14 to take second ahead of Jackson Laundry. But the big controversial news there was Sebi Kienle getting disqualified for what's been described as a positional foul.
So what happened?
Well, Seb Kienle himself posted this on his Instagram. He posted like a 3-minute clip of the Facebook Live coverage, and he was obviously pretty annoyed when he posted it, and he sort of said, like, I've never been accused of drafting in my 20-year career, and I'm baffled as to why this happened. And then it got clarified it wasn't for drafting. What happened was they were zooming down a long hill, and the athlete in front of him, it was kind of like one of those long, fast turns to the right. And the athlete in front of him was kind of on the apex of the bend on the right-hand side. And Sebi Kienle, they just zoomed in on him. And he was, I mean, you know how flexible he is. He literally had his face down between his aero bars, his hands on the sort of on the hoods with his elbows tucked against his sides. He looked like a downhill skier. And so he was going much faster than everybody else just because of his aerodynamics. I mean, I can't describe, literally his face was between his aero bars with his chin poking out through the bottom of his aero bars. I've never seen anything like it. Certainly
not even like a sort of Chris Froome Tour de France style
thing. Like that,
more...
so sitting on the top tube, with his face pressed in between his aero bars as well.
Oh my God.
So anyway, he zoomed up, and there was no room to overtake on the sort of correct side, it looked like. So he went and undertook the athlete, and the motorbike was right there, and the guy just pulled a card out and stuck it in front of him. And then the motorbike was right behind him and zoomed up and filmed him arguing or not arguing, but sort of saying to the motorbike guy, what's going on? I've never had anything like this happen before. So bit of drama caught on camera. So if people are interested, go and check that out on Facebook. It certainly makes for interesting listening. But I'm torn between this. Like, there's rules are rules. I think he was pretty hard done to be honest. He wasn't gaining an advantage. He wasn't being unsafe in inverted commas because the carriageway was like two lanes wide at that point. Certainly in my opinion anyway, but what do I know?
At one point, Robbie got up to 60 miles an hour.
Do you know what? It's not hard to believe that, looking at how fast he was zooming down compared to everybody else, certainly.
That is scary on a bike. I wouldn't want to be going that quick on a bike.
Especially when you then layer on top of that, you're sitting on the top tube, your face is pressed between the aero bar extensions.
Yeah, thanks.
No, thank you. Anyway, and that leads us neatly on, talking about Chris Froome, it leads us on to another certain Uber biker and training partner of Chris Froome, Cam Worth, doesn't it? Who had a storming performance down at Ironman Australia.
Yeah, and we have said, and he's talked about the run and improving his run for a while. Rob, he smashed sub-3. He did a 2:50 run. Yeah,
he did 2:50 in a couple of seconds as well, and I was a bit gutted for him that apparently he threw up a few hundred yards before the finishing line, so that would have been to put a 2:49 on the board is even somehow mentally it's the other side of that next barrier, isn't it? So it's a really, really good run from him, and obviously he's still set, I think, was it an 8-minute bike course record. But he's obviously learned to back his bike power off a little bit.
Yeah, he did a 4:22 on the bike, which, I mean, it was like a good 14 minutes quicker than.
Yeah, I think I read it was 8 minutes faster than the previous course record, who I believe was Moreno van Hohenacker from last year. So already it's a legit bike course record. So, just brilliant for him. He's been looking to put a race together where he really nailed the run for a long time, and to go 8:06 on that course, so another really, really fast time. And there are going to be people seriously worried in Kona this year. Now he's put essentially a 2:49 run on the board, because he doesn't have to do like a kamikaze bike leg off the front anymore and try and hold on.
No,
he can ride with the other good super bikers and get off and be confident that he's running shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Seb Kienle.
Yeah, that's good. Honestly, he has improved massively, hasn't he, over the past couple of seasons? So it's really it's brilliant to watch him. And we talk quite a bit about the different interviews that you might have heard before and maybe go back and listen to, but the one with Cam Worth was great fun.
It was really good fun, wasn't it? It sounded like you and him really hit it off, and it was a really good conversation. So we'll have to get him back on. Now he's had like his, this is like his officially his like breakthrough, nailed it, won it, really solid run. It'd be awesome to get him back on, wouldn't it? Yeah.
And then Tim Reed as well, he said afterwards, because he came second in 8:09, and he said, finally he feels like I've, put together an Ironman performance that I can be proud of. So that's cool for him. Denis Chevreau of France was third. Then Rob, the women's race. Oh my goodness. Could Laura Siddall and Caroline Steffen have been closer on? I mean, they were running side by side, and it was almost like who's going to crack. It was fantastic. So, she was down by like 6 minutes out of the swim?
I think so, yeah.
Put together a 4:58 bike, which is just awesome. And it's really amazing seeing the different coverage when you look at aero positions. Her back is so flat. You should just go and look at some of the photos that have been taken. And
which one are you talking about? Laura Siddle.
Laura Siddle.
She looks so good on the bike, yeah.
Yeah, she's got such an awesome position. 4:58, and then she did a 3:13 run to take her third consecutive win at Ironman Australia. And
brilliant.
I know she'll be absolutely over the moon, and you could hear her, I think, scream for joy in the finish shoot, because she hasn't had the results that she was after so far this season. So that will give her such a massive and well-deserved confidence boost.
Yeah, and again, it's another one of those situations where two athletes bring out the best in each other. It's one thing to win that race like Laura's done, and she's had some big leads before, hasn't she? But that sounds like it was really racing, and I think probably that 3:13 on paper doesn't reflect the fact the two of them were running like a running race and surging on each other to try and get away and claw back. And it sounds like it didn't really get settled until the final 5 or 6K anyway. So hats off to Laura and to Caroline Steffen as well, coming back from having a baby, let's not forget. So so
Caroline Steffen second, in 9:17, and then Kelsey Withrow put together the fastest run of the day, 3:11, and took third in 9:19.
And then last up, final shout out here from 70.3 Western Australia in Busselton. Craig Alexander, month before his 46th birthday, takes out another win, this time closing it with a 1:15 half marathon to take down Mike Phillips, winner of Ironman New Zealand. So, again, really legit race head to head. So he just isn't slowing down, is he?
No, he's really not. And they were head to head for all of it, weren't they? Until he pulled away on the run.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Sounds like great
and
racing.
Then Felicity Sheedy-Ryan won the women's race in 4:20.
Cool stuff. All right, over towards Coach's Couch. We've got a question this week it's not from a listener. This is a kind of conglomerate one. It's one of these questions that's coming up quite a lot at the moment for me, Hells.
And the question is, what bike power and heart rate levels should you be riding at for 70.3 and Ironman races?
So we're into May. Lots of people have got the first races of the season happening in May. Certainly in the UK, we've got races like Outlaw Half coming up, Mallorca 70.3, amongst various other ones as well. So people are now transitioning from the training into racing. So we thought we'd give you a real quick guide for both bike power and bike heart rate in terms of what you should be looking at doing to control yourself on the bike in order to have a good run. And that's the key to this. It's not about shooting for a target, because you've heard me say a number on a podcast. It's about what can you do that's reasonably shown with a large majority of people to allow you to run well off the bike. So ballpark figures here. In a 70.3, we're going to be looking for an overall normalized power of between 75% and 85% of functional threshold power. If you ride with power, we're looking at between upper zone 2 heart rate and mid zone 3 heart rate. Now, with these numbers, I want you to work out where you are on this range. If you're a slower athlete, you're going to be at the lower end of that range. So you're looking at upper zone 2 heart rate and 75% of FTP to cap yourself at. If you're a faster athlete, you're going to be looking at 85% of FTP and consequently zone 3 heart rate. Another bit of advice here is if you've got any long hills on the bike, cap your effort at 90% of FTP or the top of zone 3 heart rate on the long hills. Okay, so we transition over to Ironman. Again, we're going to look at two different kinds of athlete and everyone in between. For our slower athletes, we're going to be looking at an overall normalized power of 65% of FTP. That's bottom of zone 2 heart rate. If you're a faster athlete, we're going to be looking at 75% of FTP or top of zone 2 heart rate. And again, here as a cap for long hills, here I'm talking like 5 to 15 minute long hills, cap yourself at 85% of FTP or the top of zone 3 heart rate, and that's going to allow you to still run well without burning too many matches. the key here to put some figures on this, when I say like faster athletes, if you're aiming to do like 75% of FTP, that means you're in the realms of a sub 5 hour bike split for Ironman. If you're riding more in the sort of 6.5 hour range of an Ironman bike leg, you want to be looking at 65% of heart rate, 65% of FTP. And if you're slower than that kind of 6.5 hour range, you want to be even lower percentages than that. So the key is, the longer you're out there, the less energy you can afford to put out per hour. Essentially, you're trying to eke that energy out over a longer period of time. So it stands to reason, the longer you're out there, relatively the easier you go. The shorter time you're out there, relatively the higher percentage of that you're going to put out as you go along. Does that make sense, Hel? Does it kind of talk through that in a way that, because I think the danger is sort of saying, well, yeah, somewhere between 65 and 75%. And everyone hears that and goes, well, I'll ride at 75%. But if you're a rider who's going to be out there for a significant period of time, you're just going to be going too hard at that percentage to be able to run well off the back of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so this has come up loads this week for us in both the Oxygen Addict community Facebook group and the team Facebook group. So the kind of promotional aspect of the Team OA is, if you're looking to get some coaching, if you want more guidance like this, we're taking some new members in. We've got 4 of those slots left that I talked about last week, where basically if you take an annual membership out for a year's worth of coaching, we're going to extend that for an extra 5 months to the end of September. So basically you're going to get 2 race seasons worth of coaching for the price of one annual membership, essentially. And we're also going to be offering a 30-day money back guarantee. How about that, Hells? Money back guarantee. So you come in, you try it, and if it's not for you for any reason, we'll give you your money back and no hard feelings. So I know lots of people go, do you know what, that's a lot of money and I'm not sure if it's going to work for me. And so we wanted to be sort of upfront with people and say, well, look, come in and try it for 30 days. And if it's not for you, totally cool, you get your money back.
Yep.
Can't say fairer than that, can you?
Oh, no.
So you can head on over to teamoxygenaddict.com and read all about that over there. Sound cool?
Cool.
Sound cool. All right. So we've got an interview coming up with Alan Murchison. Alan is he's the brains behind performancechef.com. He works with British Cycling. He designs their nutritional strategies, and he also does like personalized, tailored meal plans and stuff for athletes, which I just think is a brilliant idea, because he says in this show here, most people just come back from training and then they just eat whatever's in the fridge, and that might not be the best strategy. So we got him on, and we've kind of stolen some information from him here that hopefully the listeners can use themselves to put some diets together. So yep, here's our interview of the week with Alan Murchison. Alan Murchison, it's really nice to welcome you onto the show. Thanks for taking the time to come on and talk to us and hopefully sort out all our food for us.
Crikey, how long have we got? It's going to be a long show if that's the case.
All right, so listen, I think a lot of people who listen to the show won't be new to your name. You run the website performancechef.com. I think a lot of people will be surprised to know the kind of athletic pedigree that you've got, alongside, we get to talk about the kind of chefing pedigree that you've got as well. But I always find it interesting to talk to people who've been at the very top of their field in more than one field, and the sort of the lessons that you've applied to your life to be able to do that. So let's kick off by telling listeners a little bit about you and your background in terms of cookery to start with, and how you got into all that and where it took you.
Okay, so yeah, I started off washing up. I was a hydroceramic technician, as it's affectionately known, which is a dishwasher as a young lad, and just really enjoyed, the culture of being in the kitchen, the teamwork, the hierarchy, the banter, and I worked my way up from there. Really, started in a family-run hotel in Scotland, then worked in my first Michelin-starred restaurant when I was 18. And at that point, I got excellence. There was no compromise. We had 10 chefs for like 30 guests. And even back in the sort of 80s, it was amazing the standards that we were producing. So I spent the best part of nearly 30 years working in Michelin-star restaurants. So essentially at the top of the food chain, to be honest.
Great. And then tell us a little bit about, alongside this, tell us a little about your athletic background as well, because that's where it's really going to cross over for our audience, I think.
Yeah. Well, it was good actually. I used to be a fairly good skier. I skied for Scotland, and then as part of that training, I used to run. So I was a pretty decent runner. I ran for Scotland. I had a pretty good range from about 150 for 800 meters right the way up to 29 minutes for 10k. And ran for Scotland as a cross country runner. So I was pretty handy. I'd done 150, 800. 350 for 1500 meters, 14-minute 5k, and 29:40 for 10k. But that kind of stopped when I had to really concentrate on work. So I kind of almost retired from running, not injured or anything, just purely lack of time. When I was about 21, 22, I stopped running and just kind of put it on the shelf, really, just forgot about it.
Okay. And then when did you come back to athletics in your adulthood, as it were?
It was 10 years ago. At 38, that midlife crisis, what you do with yourself, and the sort of work-life balance was getting a bit better. And the problem with, a Michelin star environment is it's hugely intense. You work 16 hours a day, every day. You don't take weekends off. And you know what? Things start to look a little bit different when you get a little bit older. So I started running again in my late 30s and, went from not being able to run at all to back to running like 31-minute 10Ks as a vet. And that happened fairly quickly. And then by default, I got injured and then got into duathlon because obviously most runners become cyclists at some point because they get injured by the nature of the event. And I got into duathlon and got pretty good at it, to be honest. I won.
You've been a bit modest here.
Yeah,
a bit good. How good did you get exactly, Al?
I won 4 European duathlon age group championships, 2 world duathlon championships. I was pretty good, nice. To be honest. So, but I had that sort of real good knack that I could go out and nail like a 15-minute 5K at the start of a duathlon. And then at that point, I was cycling about 20 minutes for 10 miles. There's not many people can do that.
It's a dangerous combination, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cracking really. So, you put the hammer down and people are playing catch up. And I would work out where people needed to catch me on the bike for them to have any chance of beating me. And I was pretty good at duathlon. So that's kind of how it came about. And then I stopped doing duathlon because my knee gave up. So I'm now just purely a cyclist. So yeah, I'm a broken runner stroke cyclist.
Ex-duathlete and now.
Yeah.
And it's worth saying you're a very handy time trialist now as well, aren't you? What sort of times are you knocking out at the moment over the time trials then?
Last season I did 48:15 for 25 miles.
Wow.
And 1:41 for 50. So yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right on the bike. But the funny thing is it's so competitive. Like you could go to like a national level race and 48 minutes for 25 miles, you might be like 5th or 6th vet. It's unbelievable, the standard. So I enjoy racing my bike, and there's loads of goals that I still want to achieve in cycling. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So this is where we get to this interesting crossover. We had a really good chat yesterday on the phone, and we were talking about the search for not even marginal gains, but the search for how you optimize your training in your life in order to be able to produce the performances that you want on your day, which is what's led to the title of your company being Performance Chef, because it's all about using food in order to help optimize that extra part of performance, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, nowadays, if you look at any athlete that wants to progress, you're probably the same. I've never come across anybody yet that wants to go slower. And, people will look at swim drills, they'll join a running club, they'll understand what about CDA, watts per kilo, TSS, everybody knows all of these metrics now, which is fascinating, really. But if you said, well, how many grams of carbohydrate do you need per kilo of body weight to be able to maintain optimal speed in a race, a lot of athletes wouldn't have a clue about that type of stuff. So it's marrying up the two. But I think the other thing, Rob, is it's also making it real and making it accessible. So it kind of started back, it was about 20, I know when it was, we had a bit of a eureka moment. I was out at the European Duathlon Championships, and it was in this horrendous place called Alcobendes, which is just outside. It was, anybody that went there will tell you about this race. It was horrific. It was basically an industrial area of Madrid, and they took us around this road, and it was awful. It was a hellish weekend with a hellish course, and It was hard. It was a hard weekend. But the one thing that happened was there was an elite squad out there of duathletes. And I remember watching the elite races because I was staying in the same hotel. And there was this young athlete called Jimmy Kershaw. So the real sort of triathlon nerds will know of Jimmy. And Jimmy's like a really talented, ballsy young athlete. And he lost, I think it was the under 20s or a junior race, whatever it was, by the thickness of a vest. Literally, it doesn't matter what level you're at. An elite title doesn't come easy. It doesn't matter if it's duathlon, triathlon. And he lost it. The night before the race, Jimmy was sat eating pizza. And he ate pizza until he was full. You know, he was doing a 50-odd-minute race. And I remember thinking, is that the right thing? And he was going back to the urban myth that the Brownlees eat margarita pizza before a race. Yeah. Now, they might, but they're racing for twice the distance. And they found out what's worked for him. And I thought at that point, you know, we had a team manager, we had a mechanic, we had a physio, and the kids were left to eat what they wanted the night before a race. And I thought, that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. So at that point, I thought there was an opportunity to sort of bridge the gap between the sort of scientists and the practical application of food and nutrition, because I knew what I was going to eat, but these kids didn't. You know, they knew the saddle height, they knew the gear ratio, they knew what K per hour they had to run to win, all of that, but they didn't know what to eat. And it seemed lunacy that you'd have all of that infrastructure and support around elite athletes, but even the basics of what do you eat before a race that you've got at 9 o'clock in the morning, they didn't know. So that's where the idea for sort of performance chef came from, is I know how to cook. I know a bit about sport, both as a competitor and having worked with a lot of other really good people. I thought, let's put the two together. And that's kind of where it came up from, really. You know, it was a missing link.
And then sort of fast forward a few years now, then talk to us about where you are at the moment, who you're working with, which athletes you've worked with, and what difference that's made to their performances.
Yeah, well, that's not happened in 2015, and then me being me, I thought, right, what do we do next? You know, and how do we sort of develop this product? And then just kind of randomly, I got a message from this American triathlete. You might have heard of a woman called Gwen Jorgensen. She's kind of pretty handy, and Gwen was like looking at box ticking before Rio Olympics, and when she did London, she deemed London to be a bit of a failure. Like, I think she came 37th in London, and for I think most athletes, becoming an Olympian is the pinnacle. For her, not winning the Olympics was a failure. So what she did was, for 4 years, she basically looked at every stone would be, you know, looked under. She'd try and tick every single box in the pursuit of winning the Olympics in Rio. And so Gwen Jorgensen reached out to us, and I went and spent some time with her and her husband, Pat, in northern Spain. So they basically moved from a very comfortable environment to a fairly draconian environment in a place called Vitoria, which is just south of Bilbao. And the coach that she got there, a guy, Jamie Turner, amazing guy, like a great leader of men, he basically would have real control over the athletes. So they had to be really, really reactive to the training, because they would go to bed each night and Jamie would set the training for the following day. So the training could be a 45-minute shakeout run. It could be a progression run. It could be 3 hours on the bike. It could be a 90-minute coffee ride. So obviously, as you know, the training and the energy systems you require are very different. So what I did was I gave sort of Pat, Gwen's husband, a sort of education program around what food looks like. I took him shopping, and we go shopping every day based around Gwen's training. And it worked really, really well. And it was just giving him the knowledge, because Pat's a really good cook, but he was essentially head cook, bottle washer, mechanic, everything for Gwen. He was that support infrastructure. And the main thing was we gave Pat the tools to be able to learn how to deal with Gwen's training. So if Gwen was going real hard, we'd know exactly what she'd eat. If she was going easier, we'd back off the carbs, we'd change the protein sources, we'd make it interesting. And it was just making it interesting. And Jamie's a real visionary with what he was doing there. And, you know, if you look at the group that Jamie Turner had, he had 7 Olympians came out of that group, one group. Now, that's almost unheard of. You know, you had Aaron Royal, Ryan Bailey, Tyler Miloschuk, Barbara Riveros, Amelie Kretz, Sarah Ann Brault, all came out of that one group. Yeah. And then you got other athletes like Charlotte McShane, and then, you know, young Jake Birtwistle. They were all in this one group staying out in northern Spain. And the culture of adaptive, responsive training really worked for them. So Jamie was very much on it. They lived it 24/7. And that's kind of was the next stage. It was his working with Gwen kind of gave us that real eureka moment. Okay, right, this is what we can do with it, because these are elite athletes at the very top of the game. And if you could put together an adaptive program that's real, what can you buy in the supermarket and what can you cook in half an hour? That's really where it came from. And that was back in 2015, the year before Rio.
I think something that's really interesting that, like I said to you yesterday when we chatted, the eureka moment is when you realize that most people pay huge amounts of their intention to what kind of training, what kind of session, whether it's a recovery session, whether it's a hard FTP session, but then they just go and eat whatever's in the fridge or whatever they see in Tesco. They just grab whatever they see when they're hungry. That moment for me yesterday was, and I think a lot of other people will be going through this, listening to it, thinking, yeah, it makes total sense to eat different meals according to the kind of training sessions that you've just had in the last couple of hours, right?
Absolutely. When you think about it, like coaching is the management of people, and it's a matter of saying, okay, well, how can you optimize this athlete? And each athlete, doesn't matter who it is, and it doesn't matter what discipline it is, they'll do probably 4 things. They'll do technical stuff, like in swimming, that deviant sport that it is. You'll do drills, you'll do all these technique work, because it's a technique-based sport. You'll do aerodynamic drills, you do running drills, and you do transitions. So you do all of that stuff as a triathlete. You'll do stuff below race pace, which is going to help you recover and repair. You'll do stuff at race pace, and you'll do stuff above it, whether that's Tabata intervals or overgeared intervals, or whatever it may be. So you've got kind of different sessions, and each of them serve a purpose. Now, if you think of food in the same way, then it makes absolutely logical sense. Is this food helping you repair and recover? Is it helping you fuel a session? And also, don't forget the psychological aspect of food as well. If we said, right, for the next 6 months, you're just going to have grilled chicken and kale, that's not sustainable. You've got to think there's an emotional relationship with food as well, which is really important. So I like going out and just riding my bike, looking over hedges, taking pictures for Instagram. And psychologically, that's good. And there's nothing wrong with, having a bar of chocolate or having a McDonald's or a dirty pizza, whatever you fancy, that's cool. So if you could get through a training block and say 80% of what you've got in your plan, whether that's your food plan or your training plan, you hit, you're going to get to start line. And as a coach, it's all about consistency. Consistency is key. Anybody that goes, well, they say, I've had a really consistent build-up. If you can get that consistency in your food, and we're not talking about weighing stuff out and actually sucking the joy out of it. But it's just making sure on heavy days you eat more of certain types of foods. On easier days, you rein it in. And it's actually understanding the athlete. We work with some athletes that just use food as fuel. They don't get emotional about it. They're not attracted to food. They're not foodies per se. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, that people that love food, that could eat cakes and really get passionate, excited about it. So you've almost got to rein them in. So it's giving the athlete enough information that they can make an informed decision. So it's trying to get away from, you can't, I always say this, you can't out-train a bad diet. And it is so, so true. And if you look at athletes that are constantly breaking down, their bodies aren't coping with the stresses, is that related to the food they're eating? Is that the protein sources? Is that the balance of diet? It's bound to play a part.
Yeah.
It's bound to. It makes sense that it's bound to do that, really.
That's such a big thing, isn't it? Looking outside the bigger picture of, well, you've picked up this niggle in this session, but it might very well, in my opinion, it's very often not the physical session that's caused it. It's looking at that picture of what is it that's causing that pain? What message does this pain carry for you? Is it that your diet has got to be a part of it, right? That what you fuel in your body has got to be a part of that.
Absolutely. But if you think about it, you wouldn't run an F1 car on fuel from a service station. The fuel is really, really important. And, if you go back years, it's only recently that like Steve Jones' marathon record was broken by Mo Farah. And all these years of advances in sports science and everything, you look at the stuff that we're having 20, 30 years ago and look at, say, the great marathon times in the UK. Like recently, you've got Mo Farah, you've got Callum Hawkins that are running real quick. But all the fastest times were done 20 or 30 years ago. And that's before the advent of sports science really wasn't really there, and sports nutrition per se as we know it now. And what they were doing was probably eating meat and fish and veg and basically non-processed food. And I think if you look at it now, you can overcomplicate it. And what we try and say is, every meal that we'll suggest an athlete has. Doesn't matter whether it's an Olympian or a beginner. You can buy everything from your local supermarket. Because let's paint a picture, Rob. You know, your average athlete, you know, probably, you know this as much as I do, they maybe train 60 to 90 minutes from Monday to Friday, then backfill the weekends. So imagine, you know, Dave that works in the city, he's maybe doing a half-hour swim or a 45-minute run in the morning. He's going to be sat at a desk all day. He's going to get in and try and knock out an hour's training in the evening. Saying to Dave, who works in the city, right, Dave, what you got to do, mate, is you got to go to the butcher's, you got to go to the farmer's market, you've got to say braised brown rice for 45 minutes. You deluded. It ain't going to happen. Dave's going to climb off his bike battered. And you're as well saying, right, Dave, get over yourself, get a bag of pre-cooked rice, get a tin of tuna, chop up an avocado, mix it together, you've got protein, carbs and fat.
Yeah.
That's, you know, if Dave's climbing off his turbo at 9 o'clock at night, he isn't steaming an organic chicken. It's not going to happen. And then if you look at, you know, we've all got external stresses of family and life and jobs and partners and all of this sort of stuff. You've got to make it real and you've got to make it applicable. And that's actually no different to, say, elite athletes, because they're on their feet all day. They don't want to be standing up and going shopping. So the mass follows class thing is, if you concentrate on what's important, you know, take all the stuff that's not important out. Like I've never seen an athlete yet that finishes a session and says, oh my God, I need 1.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight now. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't happen. They want to eat, and they want to eat then and now. So you've got to make it real. And that's where having an understanding of training sessions and what it feels like. So at the moment, I do quite a lot of work with British Cycling, which is a really cool environment to work with. And I get to train with the riders quite a bit when we're on camps. So I know what it feels like. And, you know, again, if you're going out and if you're fueling correctly on the bike, say you're going out on the bike doing 3 or 4 hours, and you're fueling correctly, sometimes you're not that hungry when you finish. Or if you go the other way and you come in and you're completely spent, you'll literally inhale anything that's in front of you. So if you've got your fueling plan for your training correct, and then you've got your food afterwards, it just becomes really balanced, and it means you can, you know, you're not putting on weight or losing weight or under or over fueling. So it sounds very wordy, but it's just looking at sessions and saying, okay, what do they look like from a fueling perspective, and what's the best thing to help you recover, not just then, but for the next day and the day after, because it's all cumulative, isn't it?
Sure. Well, can you give us a couple of easy wins then? Because I know if people are feeling anything like me, they'll be sitting there and thinking, right, okay, I definitely need to pay more attention and think ahead more as to what I'm going to have, rather than just going to the fridge and taking out whatever I bought because I'm hungry right there and then. What would be a good easy win meal for someone who's just come back from like your standard 3-hour Saturday morning club run ride?
Okay, well, before I'm a great believer in sort of preparation, and you know, before the ride, I would always have, or recommend, say, having like a Bircher muesli. Bircher muesli essentially is soaked oats. So if you took a basic Bircher muesli recipe, which would be 50 grams of oats, 50 grams of Greek yogurt, 100 milliliters of apple juice, handful of raisins, some chopped nuts. You mix that together the night before and put it in the fridge. You've essentially got a really easy breakfast to digest. Bit of grated apple in there, you're away. Afterwards, you know, I mentioned briefly about a hypothetical guy that works in the city. You know, if you've got no time to have, say, something like pre-cooked rice, chopped avocado, a tin of tuna, that's giving you everything you need. You know, poached eggs on toast with some good quality protein, either good quality ham or smoked salmon is really good. My default when I've been out for something pretty hard is poached eggs, avocado, smoked salmon and toast. And because you've got fats, you've got protein, you've got carbohydrate in there, and it tastes real good because it's smoky, it's salty, you got that nice texture of it. Works really, really well. And those are things that you can pick up at literally your local supermarket. I think batch cooking also works really well. So we tend to, use a lot of pulses as well as alternative protein sources. So to make up something like a red lentil curry using coconut milk, red lentils as your protein source, and loads of root veg, you can make a batch of that up once a week and then freeze it. And then all you need to do is cook some carbs, whether that's brown rice or noodles, and have it with it. So recipes like that are really easy to do. And I think the other thing as well is when you're on the bike, you know, I quite often I'll hear people talk about fasted sessions. And like for me, a fasted session doesn't exist. You can train fasted, but if you're doing a session, it actually requires fueling. And, you know, if anybody goes out to try to do anything more than, you know, a level 2 ride, they're not going to be able to do it fasted. It just, your body doesn't work like that. And that's the problem with the misinformation, is that, you know, you get this high fat, low carb stuff, which works at certain points. But if you're going out to, say, do a club ride, which invariably is going to be a variety of pace, there's going to be somebody pushing on, there's going to be somebody going off the front, you need to fuel for it. And like the basics that I would work on, if you can try and absorb for a level 3 ride or above, so anything that's going to be pushing you on, 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight per hour, you won't be too far off. So say you're a 75 kilo guy or girl, you know, you say, what does that look like? So that could be 1 bottle of SIS carb drink, which is 36 grams of carbs, and 2 gels, because they're 22 grams of carbs each. That's what you need an hour. And, that's a lot. But what you've got to think of is, what were you doing yesterday and what are you doing tomorrow? Because if you go less, the chances are you could end up really, really depleted. So I would always try and aim for that. And also, you know, you've got to practice this in training. You know, it's actually just thinking 360 degrees, that you wouldn't turn up to a race on a bike you've never used before. So why would you risk using nutritional product and not having a really dialed in strategy? And it happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. People who ask you 3 days before the race what the nutritional strategy should be, and you think, well, we've had all these rides to practice this. We've got to weave it into the training if it's going to be effective for race day, right?
Absolutely. Like those 48 hours prior to a race are key, and you must see it as a coach. You'll be like, I trained really well, but I didn't have the legs in a race. Okay, so your bike's the same, your tri-suit's the same, your shoes the same. Where's the missing link here? What's changed? And, you know, I love it that if you think about it, you know, the majority of your listeners will be competing at some level. You know, you don't listen to podcasts, again, to go slower. And if you, say, turn up at an age group race or a world championships or any of these things, by the time you get to the start line, you've made some significant investments. I don't like the word sacrifice, because let's be honest, all we're doing is parading about in leotards. It's a personal investment that you've made, but you've also, you know, you've invested time, you've invested money, you've got emotional debt to your family because you're disappearing off at the weekends to go and do your thing. So you almost just need to justify your performance. That's how I feel about it. You know, you want to do well, and whether finishing is your validation of doing well or winning, we want to do well. So you imagine that scenario. You're going to rock up at this age group champs or the world champs or Europeans, whatever it may be, and then the night before the race, you're there, and somebody offers you a pair of running shoes for free. They're free, these shoes. They're slightly too small. You've never tried them before. Would you use them? You go, no, I wouldn't. Or there's a brand new saddle. Go and ride 112 miles in a brand new saddle. It's free. You wouldn't do it. You'd be mad to do it. But people will go and eat in a hotel, or they'll go to a pasta party and they'll eat food prepared in an environment that they've got no control over. And they're putting their performance in somebody else's hands. They've never tried these foods. They don't know whether they're starchy or too acidic or really the balance of the meals. And that's probably got more impact, or as much impact as, you know, the running shoes that are too small. And you see it happen all the time. So I think practicing your nutrition, you know, your midweek races, your club 10 time trials, your park runs, all of those things are really, really good. And I used to use park runs as a brilliant way of practicing, you know, racing and pacing and brick sessions, because there's no pressure. But if you say, well, my park run starts at 9, 3 hours before I'm going to eat my breakfast, 90 minutes before I'm going to have 750 ml of carb drink, 30 minutes before I'm going to have a gel, 15 minutes before I'm going to have a caffeine shot, you then stand at that start line knowing exactly how your body feels, you know, your energy levels are right in a non-pressurized environment. And I think that sort of stuff is key. It's also taking out all the stuff that's not important. And I think, you know, whether you buy stuff from Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Marks and Spencer, it doesn't matter. You know, whether you're eating cod, mackerel, salmon, it doesn't matter. I think the main thing, and I'm real fortunate, Rob, that I work with athletes who are starting out right the way through to current Olympic champions, is the one thing that every single athlete that we sort of touch, the one thing they do is they practice inclusion. They all eat everything. They all eat carbs, they all eat protein, they all eat dairy. They have a really balanced diet. And I think you'll probably find the same thing with athletes that you work with. You know, they do everything. You know, they do strength and conditioning, they practice drills, they do endurance, they do speed work. And if you think about, as an athlete from a training perspective, you want to cover all of those bases. If we can do the same with food and we apply the same logic, then you should go far. That's kind of my theory with the whole thing.
Yeah. Hey, will you tell the story about Gwen preparing her meals before Rio in her hotel room?
Yeah, well, it's funny because obviously Gwen and Pat are just an amazing team, and what they did was they basically, before any race, they took the risk out of it. So she would travel to a race and they'd have like 3 bikes. You know, they'd have a wet bike, a dry bike, and a spare bike. They'd have so many sets of wheels to cover every eventuality. And what Gwen used to do, she won't mind telling you this, is that they used to prepare meals in a rice cooker in the room just to de-risk it, so they wouldn't have to go to the hotel buffet, which everybody was breathing over, coughing over, and they could just rest and relax. So they just took that control and they took their own responsibility for it, because, you know, I used to look at it, it's your performance, it's your responsibility. And you think about the generic hotel buffet. You think about the risk associated with that. You go down at 8 o'clock, that food's been out for 2 hours. Who's prepared it? Who's touched it? Who's breathed on it? And that doesn't matter whether you're trying to win the Olympics or just finish a race. So Gwen basically developed a load of recipes and just de-risked it. So it was a rice cooker. You could cook porridge in a rice cooker. You could cook complete meals. And whilst all her competitors were standing queuing up in a hotel buffet, she was chilling in a room. Just relaxing, just
taking care of all the details, huh?
It's all details. Excellence, it doesn't matter whether it's cooking, business, sport, excellence is all about the details. And, you know, it's also understanding what's important. And, you know, as a coach, you'll be able to relate to this, that a lot of people are time poor. And, you know, if I look at a couple of really good athletes that we've worked with in the past, there's a chap called John Dewey. Now, maybe your readers won't know about this guy. John, actually, up until recently, was the fastest ever amateur over 25 miles. And we worked with John in the early days. And John, get your head around this, had done 45 minutes and 20 seconds for 25 miles. Wow. Right. Get your head around that as an amateur. And the only 2 athletes that had gone faster were Marcin Biablocki, who's a pro, and Alex Dowsett, you know, the ex-world record holder for an hour, the only athletes. And what John used to do was he used to get on the train at 6 o'clock in the morning, get in at 6 o'clock at night. And Mark Bottrell, his coach, would have these vulgar sessions. You know, they were nasty. He'd do an hour, he'd get off, he'd eat and repeat it. So we had to be so diligent with what John did. And then it is amazing what he managed to do off like 6 hours training a week. And he used to do 6-7 hours a week and do 45 minutes. And then going a stage further, another Bottrell coached athlete, a guy, Stewart Travis, he was the first amateur ever to go under 45 minutes for 25 miles. He did 44:59 whilst holding down a full-time job and only training like 6 to 8 hours a week. But what Stu did was he concentrated on what was important with his food. So he'd have birch and muesli every day. He'd make his own protein. We've got this recipe called Nutty Slap, which is like a sort of protein recovery drink, which you make yourself. He just practiced all of those things, and he didn't have the time to be overthinking it. So he just concentrated on the sessions that were important and the foods that were important to his performance, and it worked really, really well. So yeah, it's kind of cool. It's cool working with people like that because, you know, professional athletes in some respects, it's a bit easier because all they've got to worry about is performance.
Well, I was going to come around to exactly that. You've managed to tell your story really well about working with the elites and working with British cycling, and obviously it's kind of easy in a certain way if you're, well, it's not easy, but if you're a professional team and you're away and you're with them and preparing the food, or if you're Gwen and you've got your husband making your meals in a hotel room the night before. The thing I found really interesting was how you found a way to create meal planners for the everyday athlete that fits in alongside their training as part of Performance Chef. So tell us a little bit about that and how sort of the everyday age group athlete can benefit from what you do.
Yeah, well, I think it's a real, you know, the performance jigsaw puzzle is a really, really difficult thing because, again, if you think about it, you've got external stresses on it, and it's actually quite hard for age group athletes because they've got jobs, they've got real life, and they've got to fit it. It's really, really, and I've done it myself, you know, I've tried doing it. It's really, really hard. So you have to be mega, mega organized. So what I would do is I would look at TrainingPeaks ultimately as a platform, see a session and then upload food to TrainingPeaks. So if you saw a session, you know, let's take a textbook Monday, could be a recovery run on a Monday morning, and it could be, say, a lighter session in the evening, but you're thinking about the following day. We would have a shopping list for the athlete that we'd send out, and then we'd also make sure that the training plan and the food, they always had it there. And it's just a matter of putting the two together and making sure that the athletes organised, and they've got a really, really precise plan. And, you know, we've got some cool athletes we work for them. We've just got a lady we've taken on board recently who's 58. She's just taken voluntary redundancy, and she wants to break an hour for 25 miles. This is a really, really, really cool project. You know, you've got a 58-year-old woman who wants to do a 59-minute 25. And all we're doing with her is that we're looking at her training, we're looking at the time she's got, and we're looking at the constraints. And I've got teenage girls, and we will, myself and my partner Vicky, we'll train, but we'll also have family meals on the same food. So we cook a lot of 1 pound dishes. We look at taking out, you know, getting over yourself with certain things. Sometimes pre-cooked rice, quick cooked pasta, that stuff's really good. You know, if you use, say, smoked fish that doesn't need cooking, it just takes out that element of it. So it's just putting the whole thing together. And if you say age group athletes or majority of athletes that you will speak to, they're really, really time poor. So there's nothing wrong with going to, say, Pret or Marks and Spencer's and grabbing lunch from there. But if you've got a session at, say, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night when you get in from work, 2 hours before it, have like a bagel with nut butter and jam. You know, that's as good as anything if you've got a session in 2 hours' time. But make sure that your food and your training plan is aligned, and that is the main thing that I would say to people to do, and that's something that we concentrate on heavily. It's just make sure that you've got all your training and your food in one place.
Got you. So it's almost like not periodizing people's food and diet exactly, but giving them different meals to eat depending on what the energy requirements and recovery requirements after each session are going to be.
Absolutely, and we've all done it. And I think that, you know, the problem you have, Rob, is like nowadays food's everywhere. Like when I started off, you know, chefs were just these sort of ogres that were hidden behind a kitchen door. But nowadays there's so much cooking on TV, and I think if you look at, say, the information stream that's out there, 16 of the top 20 best-selling hardback non-fiction books in the UK are around health and fitness. So there's lots of information out there. But for an athlete, there's a huge difference between eating well and eating optimally. So if you think about it, you know, you look at Joe Wicks of this world, you know, what he's doing is fantastic. He's a very beautiful man. You know, whether you're a man or woman, he's a good-looking boy. He's
a handsome
cracking.
fella.
He's a handsome boy, and he's doing really well. And his food looks good. It's accessible and it's real. But if you're going to do 3 by 20 minutes a sweet spot, and you're eating the food that he's doing, you're not going to finish that session. And that's the difference, is that, you know, eating loads of greens and steamed fish and everything is fantastic, and that's eating really well. But as an athlete, you know, you need carbs, you need protein. You probably need slightly more protein than your average person in the street. And if you're doing, say, an hour or 2 hours of really hard training, your calorie requirements are so much different from somebody that's just sat at a desk looking at a computer all day. It's really different. So there's a huge difference between eat, and that's the problem, is that people say, I've eaten really well. And I hear this all the time. Somebody phone me out and go, oh man, I'm not hitting my numbers in sessions, or I'm not quite performing, or I'm slightly overweight, or I'm slightly underweight, but I eat really well. I'm like, oh, cracking. What do you do? You know, it's a bit like you could train really well, but not train optimally, couldn't you? You know, there's loads of people, you must see it all the time, who do 15, 20 hours a week of junk. They just do it, you know, and they're not actually hitting the things that are really important. That's what we will try and do, is say, right, these days, try and eat more carbs, you know, try and eat more rice, have more pasta, have more bread, eat protein in these different sources. Because if you have, you know, your grilled chicken with green salad, that isn't going to fuel a hard session, and probably 2/3 of your training should be stuff that requires what I respond to as proper fueling. That would be my view on it.
Yeah. So what you're doing with Performance Chef essentially is you're providing people with day-by-day recipes to eat that's going to fit with the exact training they've been given by the coach, and they're getting shopping lists on a week-by-week basis to tell them what to go and buy to take all the guesswork out of it. So we end up fueling the right sessions at the right time with the right foods and taking all the guesswork out of it because you've already thought of it for us, right?
I have indeed. And, you know, I'm a great believer that we only ever do two things in life, Rob. We do things we enjoy, and we do things by which we can be held accountable. It's true. If you can get away with not doing it, you'll not do it, especially if you don't enjoy it. So we can,
true.
Yeah. And, you know, how often do people see a green light or a yellow light on the TrainingPeaks and it spins them out? We want to see green lights, don't we? That's what you want to see as a coach, and it's what you want to see as an athlete. Now, if we can do the same with food and make it enjoyable, like we're not talking about people having tasteless, bland food. We're talking about, oh, it's really good. Wow, it's actually good for me as well. I'm going really well. That stuff's really important, and it's amazing how many people, you know, tasteless, bland food. And, you know, my background is getting food to taste good. And I kind of almost see it's like the bridge between the sort of scientists and the athletes. So if you think about it, physiologists generally don't coach. They understand the science, but the coaching is the management of people. And it's almost the same with the food is, you know, people don't need to know what 1.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight looks like because they're not interested and it doesn't mean anything. They just want food in front of them, especially age group working athletes. They don't have the time to overanalyze it. And that's why they come to coaches and people like myself, because it means you're just taking the guesswork out of it, because it is a minefield. And, you know, I find it the same. I try loads of different things. How does that work? And, you know, I'll take certain products out of my diet. Do I feel any better? Like supplementation is a great one. You know, it's something we've not touched on, but, you know, you see all these different supplements in the market and how many of them actually work? How many of them are placebo effects? And I'll do a period of, say, 3 months. I'll spend a fortune on supplements, like £30-40 a month. Do I feel any better? I'm not convinced. I'm absolutely not convinced. But
how many tubs of wheatgrass powder do we all have in the back of the cupboard that's had one smoothie taken from it?
Exactly. You know, but there's certain things I am convinced they work. Like beta-alanine's one that I think works for me. There's a lot of science behind, say, beetroot works, but there's non-responders to beetroot. I personally don't like beetroot because it doesn't agree with my stomach at all. I took gluten out of my diet a few years ago. And this is funny, Rob, because bearing in mind, mate, I've come across every sort of food intolerance and quirk known to man in the restaurant world, you know. And I think probably my favourite one is I had a lady once who was allergic, that was the words that we used, to any animal that had been in a Disney movie.
Oh, really?
Which I thought was great. She basically didn't want to eat rabbit. And it was just like, well, clownfish was off the menu that night. You know, so I've heard all of these things, and a lot of them have no basis at all. And a few years ago, I thought, this gluten thing, I thought, nonsense, absolute nonsense. And I took it out of my diet and I did it for a month. And I was gutted, absolutely devastated, because I felt better. I was gutted.
Yeah.
It was an anti-placebo effect. I so did not want this to work. I was there. It wasn't going to make any difference to me. I was bomb-proof. I was a chef. I knew what I was doing. And I felt better. My energy levels were better. My stomach function, how my stomach worked, was better. I felt slightly less fatigued. So all I'd say to you is, you know, if anybody's got anything, you know, trial it for a little while. And if you feel better, because it's a really personal thing. And, you know, if you took 10 athletes, there's genetics, there's physiology, there's gut bacteria, there's rest and recovery, there's external stresses. There's lots of things that go into performance. So, you know, one athlete might get away with 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight. Somebody else might need 1.2. Somebody else might need 0.18. It's a really personal thing. Certain people work with certain products, like Vicky, my partner. She used to be sponsored by a pretty major sports brand. I couldn't stomach that stuff at all, even though it was free. Couldn't have it at all, you know. And that hurts me as a Scotsman, because anything free is good. I couldn't get on with it at all. I'd rather buy product, and she was the same with the product that I was using. So it's a really, really personal thing. So if you read something, or you see something, trial it, and it might work for you. Because if you got 10 athletes on the start line, or 100 athletes, all of them will have a different genetic makeup. So, you know, I can put on food looking at it. I can put on weight looking at food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I take my eye off the ball, I can put on 3-4 kilos in a week.
Yeah.
And then you've got these annoying people, I think they're called gits, that can eat whatever they want and never put on weight. Like, we all know those people.
It's like welcome to life after 45, right? All of a sudden, it's like, where did that little punch come from above my jeans? That never used to be there.
It's mad. It's a bit like, you know, in the winter as well, when we're doing like base training and we're not doing much in the way of interval work. I honestly buy 2 skin suits every season. I buy an early skin suit, which is a medium, and then I buy my middle season skin suit, because I can't get into a small in March. I can't, and I know what I'm
glad
doing.
It's not just me.
It's mad, but I think it's also quite good not to take yourself too seriously, because again, if you look at even Grand Tour riders or whatever, you know, they can only maintain a certain weight for a certain time, and if that's an issue for you, don't be at race weight in January. You know, and you know, nobody needs to be the king of January unless you're racing in January, and that's where I think it's been real and accessible about it. You know, very few people are professional athletes. You know, very few people need to be fit and lean and race weight at the start of the year. So allow yourself a little bit of leeway. Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas. Just get over yourself. Do you know what I mean? Just just relax a little bit. And then the sort of 8-12 weeks, it'd be the same with your training plans that you give athletes, Rob, that 8-12 weeks before a race, just knuckle down.
It all comes together, yeah.
That's where it comes together. And we've just started working with an athlete now who might be known. I think you've had her on you guys, a girl called Ruth Perbrook.
Yeah, we've had Ruth on a couple of times.
Yeah, like she's a real quality athlete. She's been at Kona. She won her age group in Kona. I think she has, hasn't she? I think she has.
Yeah, she has, and she just missed out on the overall age group title, didn't she?
Yeah, but if you look at what she does, she works in the city. She's a lunatic. The hours that she works and the training that she does is unbelievable. I've got no comprehension of how she does what she does. And she has to be so organised about her diet, because otherwise, I don't know when she sleeps. I reckon she must, she's like a bat. She's just awake all the time. It's just unbelievable. She's just an unbelievable athlete. So with somebody like that, you've got to be really, really, really disciplined. And I think, it's really important, Rob, that, you just make it real and accessible. That's the main thing I try and do. And the beauty of working in the food industry, you know what works and what doesn't work. And, when you spend a lifetime doing that, it's good. And yeah, I'm lucky to work with lots of nice athletes that give me good feedback as well.
Great stuff. Hey, well, listen, man, thank you so much for coming on and giving us the benefit of your wisdom after all this time. If people want to find out more and they think that they'd like some personalized food advice and nutritional guidance and stuff, your website is performancechef.com. Are you all over social media as well?
Yeah, I'm indeed. What are we on Instagram? Performance.chef on Instagram. On the Twitter sphere, it's at Alan Murchison. And also, Rob, I've got a book as well, which has just come out. So I've got a book called The Cycling Chef, which was published by Bloomsbury, which has got 70 odd recipes. And it's the recipes that we use with the athletes that we work with, and all the macros and everything in there. And there's a bit of a training plan. So that's available on Amazon and stuff. But if somebody wants to DM me, I can give them a signed copy. So yeah, we've produced a book, and it's just, again, the recipes that we work with and the stuff that we use for the athletes.
Awesome. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes and a link to performancechef.com in the show notes as well, so people can go and find out more. But listen, man, thanks so much. It's been really great talking to you, and I've learned loads and loads, and I think the listeners will have done as well. So hopefully we can talk to you again in the future and find out more.
Happy days. Yeah, it's been really enjoyable. And thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man. So you can go and check that out over at performancechef.com. Hells, you were just telling me before we were on, you've actually got his book, The Performance Cyclist, haven't you?
I have. I saw that it was going to be coming out, and I put a pre-order in before it was out, and it arrived, and I was like, oh, this is great. The Cycling Chef book. So even this morning, Rob, I made some of his apple and cinnamon bircher. I'm a massive fan of bircher muesli, always have been.
Before, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely delicious. I genuinely love that stuff. So for me, I tend to have porridge in the winter and then birch muesli in the summer. And then 2 recipes which we have, they're kind of now on heavy rotation in the Murray Brown household. The cauliflower, broccoli and chickpea curry.
Nice.
Amazing. And then the other day, every week, Rob, at Spin, we have dinner chat as we're cooling down, and I always ask people what they're having for dinner. It's like the highlight of Wednesday night Spin. And the other day I said I had made Scottish kedgeree, which is Scottish Paella, which is also in the book, which was just so good.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a great book, and even my dad loved it. My dad picked it up because we were like, oh look, I've made this, and he loved it. He was like, oh, look at those lovely photos in there. There's some good energy bars in it too.
So endorsed by Helen Moreno, Les. You've got to love it. All right. So our interview was brought to us by precisionhydration.com. Remember, guys, you can get yourself £9.99's worth of Precision Hydration for free using the code OxygenAddict. Get on their website and take that online sweat test if you haven't done already. And if it shows that you're a particularly salty or heavy sweater, you need to be giving some serious thought to your electrolytes. These are the best guys in the business for that, and they can give you loads of guidance, and you can be putting the right amount of electrolyte salts in your drinks in a way that actually doesn't make your drink taste salty and disgusting. So that's really, really cool.
Rob, I didn't tell you one thing, and then I'm not gonna blabber on, don't worry. But I went to see the Precision Hydration guys at the London Marathon Expo and met Sean, who usually works out in the North America.
Nice.
Yeah, Yeah. So it was nice to see them there. They were very, very busy when I was there, but I was there on the Saturday, which is always rammed. But yeah, they were busy. Lots of people around the precision hydration stand.
All right, so we've got a few bits and bobs of news that we've seen from around the world. Hells, do you know what? I've had my blood tests back. I've had a second set done. You know, we had those Thriver tests done 2 months ago.
A while ago. Yeah. So is there a change?
Do you know, it's good news, right? So back then I had almost no levels of vitamin B12 and very low vitamin D. So did the sensible thing, went and got supplements and started supplementing with that. My vitamin D levels are now right back up into the solid green area, which is awesome.
Good. Yeah.
B12 levels, they've come up, but they're still in the low area, which has been, it's a real surprise to me, that actually, because I've been taking like the most potent B12 supplement you can get. And it's taken me from, I think you've got to get to a level of 500 micro whatevers to be into the green category. And I've gone from 100 to 250. So I'm still not up into the you've got enough kind of level. So it's been really interesting for me, because even taking a supplement, my diet's obviously not providing me with what I need according to the guidance levels. So it's going to be it's interesting, isn't it, how we've had this chat with Alan on the show this week, and we had a bit of a chat about the whole vegan diet afterwards, and he had some pretty strong opinions about it, and I was going, okay, so like ethically I've got this opinion, but actually I might need to take another look at this and either
for your health, like
seriously supplement with something more, or do I start? So I've got some decisions to make around that, and it's been interesting for me because I basically wouldn't have had access to this if I hadn't done the Thriver blood test. I wouldn't have had any clue at all what was going on, and I wouldn't have been able to monitor it either. So it's been really super interesting for me. So guys who are listening, I think there's probably more than a few people out there who've often thought it's going to be interesting to get your vitamins and, you know, cholesterol and all those levels. I think they've basically released a package now, where you can choose and pick and choose for whatever you want. They've got everything on there, from the basic pack through to, you know, get your testosterone and your everything measured that you could possibly be interested in, and kind of build it up as a package. So yeah, you guys can get £25 off your first test with the code OxygenAddict25 over at thriver.co if it sounds like something that would be interesting and might possibly help out your health and or your racing performances. Right, Hells, I'm excited about this. When I first got into Ironman, one of the guys I used to follow on a blog was called Gordo Byrne, and he set out to win Ironman Canada. And in a way, like following his races and his build up to this race every year was like an ongoing, not a proper drama, but he would blog every week, and it would all be about like trying to win Canada. So Ironman Canada in Penticton, I feel like it's got a special place in my like interest for Ironman. And obviously it moved from Penticton to Whistler a few years ago.
Yes.
And it looks like it could well be moving back to Penticton. I found a link through a thread on Slow Twitch where someone had said, look, have you guys seen this? There's a town meeting this week about lobbying to get the Ironman back here. Yeah.
You're now looking at like town and local council.
Yeah, totally.
This is brilliant. This has taken triathlon, like, I was going to say triathlon geekness to a whole new level, Rob.
It definitely has, hasn't it?
Almost anyway, like the town council minutes.
So watch this space. I believe the meeting's happening on Tuesday of this week.
Oh, great. Well, you'll be there. You'll be refreshing. Hit refresh on the. You know, someone will be no doubt taking notes, and you'll be like, "Oh my god, what's the result? What's the result?"
That's it. So it might be. Yeah. And I know loads of people have. The ITU Worlds were held at Penticton a couple of years back, so I think it's also got a place in a lot of people's hearts because of that. So, yeah, cool. If it moves back there, I think it'd be good. They've got a wall of fame or a walk of fame there where they've got like stars cemented into the, you know, like in Disney World or wherever.
Yeah.
All the winners have got their own like star in the sidewalk, which is really cool.
I've been to Penticton, Rob.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't do triathlon there. It was as an 18-year-old. I think there was a big keg party or something. I was just trying to think, what did we do at Penticton? Somewhere I did a skydive, but that might have been Kelowna. And Penticton, I think, was a keg party.
There you go. Well,
There you go.
Maybe holds a star on the sidewalk with your name on somewhere for the keg party. Let's hope not, hey?
The other bit of news to bring you is that the 2021 70.3 World Championships are going to be held at St. George in Utah, which is pretty. It just looks like such an amazing place. And Rob, do you remember the other week you were saying those pictures look like Lanzarote? And I was like, no, they don't.
That's where they look like.
They look like St. George.
Terra de Fuego, wasn't it? Yeah, you're right.
That's what it looks like. So, but what they've done, it's not just that the 70.3 World Championships are going to be held. They've sort of done like this deal, basically, that over 5 years there are going to be various 70.3 and Ironman races. So 2019 is going to be St. George 70.3.
Yep.
2020 they're going to have an Ironman race there, and it's going to be the
full distance.
Yeah, North American Championship.
Oh, okay. So they're going to move that around then.
Yes. Then 2021 they're going to have 70.3 and 70.3 World Championship.
Yeah.
So 2 events.
So two separate events, yeah.
2 separate events. Then 2022 they're going to have 70.3.
Got ya.
And then the following year they are going to have once again the Ironman full distance, and it will be North American Championship.
Nice. Good stuff.
Looks great, doesn't it? And Rob, the only other bit of news I want to bring you is, the other day I said, I'm going to go and buy a pair of prescription goggles, and I'm going to do it right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Not getting anywhere yet. I just need to go to the opticians. So basically, ones that most people can probably get just off the shelf. I can't. My eyes are too rubbish.
So you've got to get a special pair of really thick ones.
I think I'm going to have... Oh, God, I don't know. I need to go to the opticians. But, yeah, basically, like, I don't know, Aquasphere, Speedo, all of them do prescription goggles, but they just do not cater for my rubbish eyesight. Which, seriously, this is why I am so interested to actually get a pair of prescription goggles. I'm intrigued as to what it's going to be like if I can actually see.
It's going to be better, hasn't it? It's going to be really, really difficult trying to sight and stuff when you basically can't see where you're going. Exactly. How do you manage usually?
I don't even know. Do
you just kind of follow the feet in front of you, kind of thing?
Well, I just sort of hope that they put big boys out and that they're like bright yellow or something.
Yeah.
Because I do find it quite hard.
Yeah, sure.
Really, unsurprisingly.
Yeah. Bless you. Okay. All right, I guess we better wrap this up, hadn't we?
Yes.
All right, everybody. So thanks very much for listening. Again, a quick shout out to our sponsors, Thriver.co. Remember, you can use the code OxygenAddict25. PrecisionHydration.com, use the code OxygenAddict. And Tribe, wearetribe.co/OxygenAddict. You can use the code TribeOxygenAddict to get all kinds of delicious, yummy things for your tummy. So until next week, everybody, I hope you have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray, and I'm about to switch the TV on to Line of Duty.
And we shall speak to you all again next week. Cheers, everybody. See ya.